We talked in great detail in a previous episode, a lot of things insurance and how it's changed in the last couple of
Yeah.
years, a lot of things. In this episode, we're really going to focus on some myths, myth busting.
Bust 'em.
So these are the things that we hear a lot, or not me necessarily, but you hear a lot. And we want to make sure that people have accurate information. People too often, I think, first of all, don't read their policy because nobody reads anything anymore. And they only watch videos.
Yes. There you go.
That's why
There you go.
this is why we're making this video for you.
You're welcome.
So, they're making assumptions about what's covered, and they just kind of think, I have a homeowner's policy, everything's covered. So we're gonna bust some of those myths.
Yeah, great.
And we've got
Do it.
yes, we've got Amanda Berry with Legacy Insurance Partners. Amanda is an expert in her field. She's my go-to insurance broker, and so we're happy to have you. Thank you for being here.
Thanks. We've been through a lot.
Yeah,
So much has changed.
I know.
But you're keeping up really well.
Are you surprised at my insurance knowledge?
I'm shocked. The conversations we have, I love to have with my coworkers, my colleagues at Legacy Insurance Partners, but you're one of the few realtors that actually entertain me. I love it.
Well, it's important.
It is.
All right, let's get right into it. So here's a big myth. This is why I have insurance. I should just be able to file a claim anytime for any reason with no repercussions. Why else would I have insurance?
Yeah. So from the perspective of the people paying out these claims, these insurance carriers, I mean, they're bleeding out. They don't have enough money to pay and pay and pay, especially in Colorado. So if you're working with a carrier that covers the whole country, I mean, there are natural disasters happening everywhere. And it's just more and more expensive to rebuild a home, cost to replace, the materials for even just a portion of a home that needs to be repaired. And cars, I'll throw cars in there too. We're talking about homeowners insurance mostly, but theft and theft and break-ins and collisions. And out here in Colorado, glass claims. I mean, I never come across a home or an auto policy that doesn't have at least 2 or 3 claims. That is now starting to shoot us in the foot. So we can't make claims for every old little thing anymore. And the carriers are deliberately putting a stop to that with some pretty unusual, like cruel and unusual punishment. It feels like just not being willing to write a policy, non-renewing a policy after you hit like claim number 2.
Yeah,
or
people.
yeah, or doubling the rate, as we've talked about.
Well, and in the last couple of years, we've also talked about almost everyone's rate has gone up by 50%, right?
Yeah.
Oh, so tough. All right, let's do another myth. Let's bust another myth. If my roof leaks, my insurance will pay for a new roof.
You better know what the language of your policy is, which means a call to your agent or broker. Full replacement costs, yes, you'll get a new roof. There will be consequences possibly after, but you'll get your new roof. If it's actual cash value, that means you're like depreciated coverage, basically. So what this conversation would be to have with your agent or broker is, what was the roof settlement at the time of the loss? So there's a date associated with like a claim, and then the policy language at that time of this reported date is what matters most to whether or not the roof's going to be replaced.
And maybe we should talk a little bit more about this replacement cost versus actual cash value. I know you just touched on it, but maybe you could just sort of explain those two things a little bit more.
So in another episode, we talked about RCE. So that's going to get us to 100% value of like the reconstruction cost for the home, the structure.
The replacement cost estimate.
Yes. So that replacement cost estimate will reflect 100% to rebuild a home, and the roof is included. There's a lot of roofs once they hit past age 10 that they're no longer available to have that full replacement cost like the rest of your home. So the home itself would be rebuildable at, full replacement, but once the roof ages out of whatever that carrier's appetite is, it becomes actual cash value. It's like a sliding scale,
It's
age.
almost like depreciation, right? That
Absolutely.
actual cash value, which is
Yes.
confusing, right? Because when I say actual cash value out loud, to me, that says whatever the actual cash is that I need, I would get.
Yeah.
That is not what they're saying at all. They're taking a value of the roof that they determine, and then I think they're adding depreciation and time on, and
Yes.
then giving you a smaller amount of money to go towards a new one, but they're not paying for the
Right.
full thing.
So if your roof is older than 10 years, I would strongly suggest that you would call your agent and say, does my roof currently qualify for full replacement cost? Have that conversation. It's the roof settlement. If you're a DIY kind of person and you feel comfortable looking at your own paperwork, um, that's brave. But if you can look for roof settlement language, that'll tell you if you're covered or not fully for your roof.
Okay. All right. All right, another myth busted. All right, here's the next one. My jewelry, electronics, and collectibles are fully covered under my homeowner's policy. So if somebody comes in, maybe B&Es me or burglarizes or something, maybe I have a cat burglar. I'm just
Okay. That's a bad cat.
meow. If you have a cat burglar and they take all your jewelry, will your
Yeah.
insurance cover that?
I haven't gotten that one before, but in theft or fire or flood or I'm not sure,
Any loss.
mischievous misplacement, which is like an endorsement at some carriers, which just means mysterious disappearance. That can be covered at some carriers. What we're talking about here is personal property and contents. So picture this. You've got your structure, your home that you're living in.
Mhm.
If you tip it upside down, whatever falls from it is considered your stuff, your personal property, your contents. Everything else is dwelling. So if it doesn't fall from like the frame, that's your dwelling. What we're talking about is the stuff you brought in boxes, all your Amazon item orders, like all those contents. If something is damaged, lost, or stolen, it's covered at full replacement cost if you have that endorsement. I can't say that full replacement cost is required because it's actually optional, but I've never seen a policy without it from like any competitor. It's a standard to make sure that full replacement cost on your contents is written into a policy, but it is an endorsement. So I always check it just to make sure it's there if I'm sending someone away with a policy that's not one I've written. And I would say, yes, it's covered unless it exceeds the value of about 2,500. Once you start looking at that amount for any one item, bicycles are really frequent, jewelry, artwork, rugs, like Persian rug. People have amazing things. Colorado's a cool
Collectibles.
city, and people come from all over the world with their really cool stuff, and they have to itemize it to make sure that it's actually fully covered.
So you're saying that if I have anything at my house that is maybe worth more than $2,500,
Mhm.
it's worth having a conversation with my agent about whether that might be covered just in the standard contents coverage, or if I need to pay extra to add an endorsement specifically for that item or those items.
Perfect. Well said.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, good. I'm glad we got that myth busted.
Busted.
All right, next one. If a contractor gets hurt at my house, I'm not responsible. Because my insurance would cover that, wouldn't it?
Your insurance will not touch that. No, you would not. You're responsible for who you choose to work on your home. And before hiring anyone to work on your home, you'd be wise to vet them a little, make sure that they have, that they're licensed and bonded and insured. If they get hurt, it's their own policy that would protect them, specifically like their workers' comp. So if they get hurt on the job and they think that that's your problem, red flags all over that. Yeah, that's like, no.
This is such good advice that
Yeah.
is sort of not even in the realm of insurance, but just good advice. If you have somebody working at your home, then ask to see their insurance
Yeah.
policy. You know how sometimes you have to submit an insurance policy and add something as the additional insured?
Mhm.
Is that something that you should be asking to be put on as an additional insured while they're at your home? Or is that
No,
okay? It's not
but you would
necessary.
want to see you should ask for like the certificate of insurance,
Yeah.
and the project that they are pulling permits for to perform the work at your home would be visible, transparent documents they should be willing to share.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
good. So if they don't have insurance or they're not willing to share their certificate of insurance, then move on, find someone else to hire. Okay.
And the carriers wanna make sure when you've gotten repairs done and you're submitting these documents of repairs, that they are a licensed and insured contractor. So having your neighbor or handyman friend without any paperwork would also be a problem later on with
Could be.
insurability.
Could be.
Very likely, yes.
So what are you saying? That just no one can do DIY and have their friend over to help them do projects at their house
Let's bust this
anymore?
myth. No, but if it's something that would require a permit, make sure you have a permit.
Okay.
And the people who pull permits typically have those credentials, so
Yes.
it's not usually an issue, but
Gotcha.
don't hire the neighbor kid to redo your bathroom.
To put in your new water heater.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Here's the next myth. Once I get a quote from you, that's the rate. That's what I can expect to pay. Because you gave me the quote. So that's what I'm going to pay.
Ah, where do I start? So it's kind of like a bank rate. It could change every day. The appetites in the markets are changing so frequently that I let everyone know we need to review this sooner than later, because if we let it, first of all, the quotes expire in 30 days.
Okay.
That's a big thing. And if there's anything could change on the carrier side that would affect you. So when we get alerts that, hey, there's going to be a rate increase as this date, we like to get something submitted and push through before that date approaches, because even though they tell us that they'll honor the rate for 30 days, we've had experiences where we had to fight for that and it was just a mess. So yeah, I would say no. Very few things would change it other than those that I mentioned. The carrier's appetite changing, which is not a risk I'm willing to take. So I let people know, nothing's guaranteed. We need to talk about this ASAP and put a plan together to get this issued, because if you sit on it, I can't guarantee that the rates aren't going to change.
Well, can you talk a little bit about the quote versus a binder versus a policy?
Yeah.
Because those are three separate
I
things.
love that you know to ask these things. You're such a nerd.
Such a great question asker. I know.
You're just really an amazing realtor. You look out for your people. A quote is going to have the reports ran. Make sure of that. If you're not shopping with me, definitely want to make sure they've ran all the reports, which is a soft inquiry. And you want to also make sure that any losses have been rejected, disputed, declined, because those really impact the rate. So it could be a better rate. I've seen that happen too, where it's oh, that's not even theirs, or that driver's not in the household. Let's exclude that. So there's ways of verifying things, I would say. What else could affect the rate?
No, what is the binder?
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
The binder is the document I send to the mortgage rep. So that is a binding agreement that's what the policy will issue at. But me, with my experience, I know that the rate still could change between having that binder sent out and the actual declarations page, which happens when I hit issue policy. A
And
binder's a promise.
And that doesn't happen, the policy doesn't actually get issued until the effective date, when we close.
Not necessarily. You can have a future effective date. So I like to have the binding date, when I send the evidence of insurance to the lender, be within a couple of days of when I issue the policy. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way because people say the closing date might change, so please wait. Or they're not sure if they're going to get a new roof or not. So the rate might go down if they do get a new roof. Things do happen that change after the mortgage lender is I need that evidence of insurance. The deal's not closed.
Okay, so because I was kind of thinking once you got the binder, then maybe the rate was set, but
It
that's
should
not.
be, but things have changed in the past. So that is based on what I know now and all the information at our disposal right now, and pending underwriting guidelines or underwriting from the mortgage. The mortgage still has a say if they're going to accept that or not. So if something changes with the underwriting or the closing date gets held up or held up, sometimes we'll just see changes that we can't anticipate. And usually it's because of the carriers.
Yeah.
So I stand behind the evidence of insurance based on today.
Have
really.
you seen any deals fall apart because the insurance rate changed from the time that it was quoted to closing?
No.
You haven't? Okay, good.
And it's because I let people know, like, we can't sit on this. We need to move.
Do you so is it it becomes, uh, set in stone, so to speak, once you take the payment for it, right?
Yes.
So, are there some situations in which homeowners would go ahead and pay you for it now with the future effective date
Mhm.
versus waiting to pay it with their closing costs at closing?
Well, they can still I can issue it. So it's like paying it. So when I send a binder, I haven't necessarily issued the policy. I want to issue the policy as soon as possible. When I hit issue, it's like submitting a payment and I'm sending that bill, the invoice to the mortgage company. That gets paid at title by title at the closing table when they do that process on the
Okay.
closing date. So it's as good as a payment when I hit issue the policy. The binder is kind of like, okay, everyone's in agreement here that this is what it's going to look like. Here you go, lender. And then like looking
Things are
for,
still up in the air is
yeah,
why you haven't issued it yet.
but I'm really working with the client to get it done and issued immediately. Um, Not to add another piece to the puzzle, and I know we're focusing on myths, but there's like a whole post inspection process too.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So things change then also sometimes. About I would say
That's after close.
10% when you think all is said and done and that you never have to hear the word insurance for like another year until it renews. We get memos all the time like, hey, we did an exterior inspection. We noticed some debris in the yard. We noticed some granular loss. There's some tree overhang. Address that and give us the proof or the photos of whatever being done. And so if we don't, we're talking pending cancellations. I mean, it takes so much upfront work, field underwriting for me to like really be confident where I'm placing the business. And then it's up to the carrier if they're liking what I'm presenting. And then the underwriter gets the final say. And then, okay, great. We got through all that. We issued the policy. Fingers crossed that there's nothing I don't know about the property that could hiccup the post inspection.
When they send somebody out to look at it, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Whew, okay. Let's see, where are we at? Oh, okay, so next myth to bust. Flood insurance is included in my home insurance.
Never ever.
Never ever.
Never ever. So flood insurance is pretty affordable, even if it's not required by your mortgage and you think you could be affected. Usually neighbors know. Like if you're moving into a new home, ask your neighbors. You know, there's a creek over there. I feel like we're downhill. Do you have flood insurance? If your lender isn't requiring it, you can still purchase it. It's much more affordable, but it's a separate policy altogether.
Yeah, it's totally different.
Totally.
Totally different.
Zone X means you're not in a flood zone.
Now, but talking about water, because I found this out a long time ago. This was in my first house. I woke up in the middle of the night and started walking down the hall, and the further I walked, the more wet it was, and there was like a couple of inches.
Yeah.
And you know, if that was a flood, because it felt like a flood, I was walking through a couple of inches of water, right? If it was a flood, they would have never covered that. But
Right.
because the water came from inside the house, I think the dishwasher or something had busted apart, and that was where all the water was coming from.
Yeah.
So because the water had come from inside the house, then in that case, they did cover it.
Great. Good.
Um,
Water from outside the home is flood.
yes. Okay. So that's the difference.
That's
what
what's
I was
not
getting.
covered, yeah, on a standard home policy.
Yeah.
We've had a flash flood, a surprise a couple years ago in like South Colorado, south of Denver. And it took, I would say I spent 2 weeks on the phone, back-to-back calls, just trying to help people not be upset that they weren't covered for these things.
Oh, that's so sad.
Yeah.
So if you're concerned about floods, get flood insurance. All right. Next myth. Um, getting insurance quote is quick and easy. And
Oh,
we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but like, yeah, no, it's not.
no. I miss those days. Also, like I've become a much better broker because of all this stuff that I've had to learn and meeting people and the carriers and kind of being that middleman between it all. Staying current on the appetites of each carrier and knowing what really are they looking for and not getting lost in the weeds because there's a lot going on that affects homeowners, realtors, mortgage lenders. And I'm like a messenger, and I just have to learn it all and make sure I can help you.
So if you're able to quote with a standard carrier, is it still like a couple day turnaround time?
Yes.
Couple days. But then if they're not eligible for the standard carrier or they get denied and you have to go to those
Right.
excess and surplus lines or the non-standard carriers, now how much time are we looking at for a quote turnaround?
Anywhere from like 4 to 8 days. It depends on how bogged down they are because I'm not doing it myself. I'm like utilizing the relationship that they're doing what I'm doing, but in that market.
Mhm.
And so it depends on how buried they are, which because of the frequency of being rejected by standard carriers, they're very buried. And so they're hiring and they're always looking, to make this process quicker for us. But yeah, they're shopping, underwriters like Markel, Scottsdale, Livingston, Lloyd's of London, the names that you would never know,
Yeah. Well, and I
right?
think the bottom line is like you, especially in real estate, you just cannot wait until the last minute to get property
Right.
insurance. It used to be just sort of this given, we could kind of do it at the last minute.
Mhm.
The underwriters are asking for it, so we'll just get it done real
Yeah.
quick. And that's just not the case anymore.
No, and thankfully, realtors, like you are introducing it early on in the process
Mhm.
and making sure, for everyone's sake, that we're not, like, keeping that on the back burner until we're 2 weeks before closing. At least 30 days before the closing date is the right time to get a quote, even 45 days, because 'cause it'll take about a week to get things rolling,
Yeah.
discuss the quote, and then, like I said, the quote will expire in 30 days, so we'll be able to issue it before the actual closing is the goal.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much for asking that.
So, okay, this is going to be my favorite myth to bust. Are you ready?
I hope so. I don't know.
All policies are the same. I just need the cheap one.
Well,
Give me the cheapest policy you got, Amanda.
there's no easy button here. I don't even entertain that thought. I'm like, cheap and efficient, you don't get it all. If you want cheap, I'm probably not the right agent because I don't think there is such a thing as paying super little for something so important. It's about the value of the home, and the homes are expensive in Denver and all around Colorado. So you're gonna pay for the homeownership in a lot of ways, but especially making sure that you have a comprehensive policy. Why pay for something that's not gonna work?
Well, this is what I talk about when we're doing inspections, right? And I
Yeah.
say, look, you're going to pay for the general inspector, maybe a sewer scope, maybe a radon test,
Yeah.
and you're going to lay out several $100s here. Now, if we then have to go and bring in an electrician or a plumber or an HVAC tech, and they want trip charges or diagnostic
Mhm.
fees, and maybe you end up spending in total, it's going to be less than $1,000, right? Even if you have to
Right?
pull out several other professionals. Even the structural engineer, if we want to get him out there, it's 2 or 300 bucks, right? So that stuff adds up. But when you're talking about buying a piece of property that's $500,000,
Mhm.
$800,000, under $1,000 is really not that much to sort of like insure it's not insurance, but to check out your investment, right?
Right.
And so this is the exact same thing with homeowners insurance. Like, even if you're now at $3,500 a year instead of 2 grand or 2,500, you know, $3,500 a year is really, when you change your mindset around and you think about like, I'm protecting this $700,000 piece of real estate
Mhm.
that's my biggest financial asset,
Yeah.
like, that's worth it.
Yeah, you can't really put a price on the peace of mind, right? So like we talk about the scenarios that people are most worried about happening in their property and to them. And that's what we insure, and I would say, to give you an example, today I sent out a quote for a $600,000 purchase price home. That was the market value. The replacement cost estimate, the cost to reconstruct it, was 400,000 on this home. And so at the end of customizing it to make sure water backup was included, and they had a $5,000 wind hail deductible and then a $5,000 all other perils AOP deductible for everything other than wind and hail that's covered. The price shaked out to be 3,200. The lender estimated 3,000 and thought she was really overestimating it, knowing that things have been changing and getting more expensive. It ended up being a little bit more than what she estimated. Um, for any lender that's estimating 2,000 on a home, like a solid single family full structure home is like, I would say it needs to be at least 3,000.
I think so too, and I've asked my lenders to do that because, I find out, what is the max monthly payment that you're saying this person, this borrower
Right.
can go up to, and I know that part of that PITI, you've got the principal, the interest, the taxes, and the insurance. So
Right.
part of that's the insurance, and I am asking them, how much are you putting into that monthly amount?
Uh,
And then I tell them, I'm like, no, that like you need to
It's outdated,
I
right?
need to get that up to 3,000,
Yeah. Thank you for that.
I think 3,000 I'm comfortable going with the 3,000 estimate for a
And that's not
single
cheap,
family.
right? So
Uh,
cheap isn't the word I would use to describe a policy. You want a policy that works,
mhm.
you know? Comprehensive would be the word to use, or customized. But like if someone's calling me and they want a cheap policy, immediately just kind of letting them know that if $3,000 is cheap to you, sure, I'll write that. No problem. But that's a lot of money for anyone.
Mhm.
So I just wouldn't put that word in that conversation of like the value of insuring your home and having the peace of mind.
Yeah. Yeah, because if something happens, where are you gonna go?
Right. Kiki's couch.
No. All right. Well, hopefully we busted a bunch of myths for you all. And if you have any more questions about insurance, I'm sure you've been able to tell that Amanda is an absolute expert in this field. So call Amanda Berry at Legacy Insurance Partners with all of your insurance questions and for quotes. And we'll see you next time.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. If you like this content and want to support the channel, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go.